The sleek vessels of the Galactic Confederation hung in Earth's orbit like dark jewels against the starry background. These ships, with their curved hulls and silent engines, represented the most advanced species in the known galaxy. They had traveled far to reach the small blue planet that had recently begun broadcasting signals into space. Admiral Day stood tall on the bridge of the flagship, his posture perfect as he studied the view screen showing Earth below. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world, giving him dense muscles and a thick skeletal structure that made humans look fragile by comparison. "The scans are complete, Admiral," said Science Officer Kim, approaching with a data tablet. Her skin had a slight blue tint that shifted with her movements. "The dominant species shows concerning physical limitations." Admiral Day took the tablet, scrolling through the biological information with a frown. "Calcium-based skeleton? So brittle. And their muscle density is approximately 1/3 of Confederation standard." "Yes, sir. They would not survive on most Confederation worlds without significant protection," Kim confirmed. "Their organs have minimal redundancy, and their skin offers almost no protection against radiation or physical trauma." Lieutenant Park joined them, her uniform crisp and formal. "Another species requiring our guidance, it seems." "Indeed," Admiral Day nodded. "Prepare the Standard Protection Treaty. These humans appear intelligent enough to understand their place in the galactic order." 3 days later, the Confederation's diplomatic team stood in the Grand United Nations Hall in New York City. Humans from all countries had gathered to meet the alien representatives. The room buzzed with excitement and nervousness. President Han of the United Earth Government stepped forward to greet Admiral Day. She was nearly half his height, her frame slender compared to his powerful build. Yet her eyes held a steady, calculating gaze that Admiral Day failed to notice. "We welcome you to Earth," President Han said through the translation devices. "This is a historic moment for humanity." Admiral Day gave a short bow, a gesture his cultural team had advised would show respect to humans. "The Galactic Confederation is pleased to welcome Earth into our protection network. We have observed your broadcasts and determined that your species shows promise despite certain physical limitations." A slight tightening around President Han's eyes was the only indication of her reaction. "We are eager to learn about the galaxy," she replied smoothly. The Confederation team presented their Standard Protection Treaty. The terms were clear. Earth would receive defensive support, technological guidance, and cultural exchange. In return, the Confederation would have access to certain resources and would oversee human space development to ensure it followed galactic standards. As the documents were displayed on large screens for the assembly, Defense Minister Jun leaned slightly toward President Han. "They've scanned our bodies but not our capabilities," he whispered. President Han gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Let them underestimate us. It gives us time." Admiral Day watched with satisfaction as the human representatives discussed the terms. He had overseen dozens of similar integrations. Some species resisted at first, unwilling to accept their biological inferiority, but humans seemed refreshingly pragmatic. "Your species is wise to accept guidance," Admiral Day told President Han as she prepared to sign the treaty. "The galaxy can be dangerous for physically vulnerable races. We humans have always been aware of our vulnerabilities," President Han replied. "It's why we've become so adaptable." The treaty was signed with great ceremony. Confederation representatives exchanged pleasantries with human leaders, while scanning teams continued to gather data on Earth's biology, technology, and culture. That evening, after the Confederation representatives had returned to their ships, President Han met with her Security Council in a deeply shielded room beneath the United Nations building. "They've classified us as a Category 3 protected species," Admiral Lee reported. "They believe we require their oversight due to our physical fragility." "And Project Thunderchild?" President Han asked. "Proceeding ahead of schedule," Admiral Lee replied. "The Confederation scans are focused on biological signatures and visible technology. They've completely missed our deep space facilities," Defense Minister Jun added. "Their scans search for muscle mass, natural armor, biological weapons. They're looking for strength as they define it." Then we continue as planned, President Han decided. Accept their protection while we complete our preparations. Let them believe what they wish about human capabilities. As the meeting concluded, President Han looked at the night sky through a small window, knowing that the Confederation ships orbited above, watching but not truly seeing. Humanity has never been strong in the way they measure strength, she said quietly, and that has always been our greatest advantage. Claude, you should make sure to cite any statement of facts that you retrieve from the web using the tags. For example, make sure to only include the index value in the tag. 6 months had passed since Earth joined the Galactic Confederation. The initial excitement of first contact had faded, replaced by a growing unease among human leaders. What had begun as a supposedly beneficial alliance was showing its true colors. The morning sky over the Mars colony glowed red as massive Confederation mining ships descended through the thin atmosphere. These ships, each the size of a small city, were not part of the original agreement. Yet they came every week now, taking more resources each time. In her office at Earth Command, President Han reviewed the latest reports with a tight expression. The holographic display showed increasing Confederation activity throughout the solar system. They've exceeded the extraction quotas by 340%, Defense Minister Jun said, pointing to the data. The resources they're taking weren't even included in our agreement. President Han's expression remained carefully neutral. And our formal protests? Ignored, replied Foreign Secretary Yoon. Admiral Day claims the original treaty gives them rights to any non-essential resources in our system. Their definition of non-essential seems to include everything we don't actively hold in our hands. The room fell silent as the implications settled over the group. Earth had been naive to trust so quickly. Tell me about Project Thunderchild, President Han finally said, turning to Admiral Lee. The military leader stepped forward, activating a secure holographic display. We're ahead of schedule. The Confederation intelligence scans focus primarily on biological signatures and visible infrastructure. They're looking for muscle mass, exoskeletons, natural weapons, things they consider signs of strength. They're not looking for what we're building, Security Chief Hyun added with a small smile. Their sensors pass right over our deep space facilities because they're searching for the wrong signals. They intercepted some communications about Thunderchild last week, Admiral Lee continued. Their response was telling. Admiral Day actually laughed and said it was probably some primitive defense satellite. President Han nodded. Good. Continue as planned. Let them think what they wish. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent alert. A young officer rushed in, face pale with concern. Madam President, the Confederation has destroyed our research outpost on Ganymede. The room erupted in shocked voices. Casualties? President Han asked sharply. 12 dead, 27 injured. The Confederation is claiming it was an unfortunate mining accident. They say our outpost was unexpectedly in the extraction zone. President Han's eyes hardened. This is no accident. They're testing our resolve. We should respond with force, urged General Beck, his fist hitting the table. Show them we won't be bullied. No, President Han said firmly. That's exactly what they expect. An emotional, disorganized response they can use to justify greater control. We will be smarter. She stood, addressing her cabinet with quiet authority. Recall all human representatives from Confederation space immediately. Accelerate the Thunderchild timeline and begin quietly evacuating our outer colonies. The Confederation will notice these actions, Foreign Secretary Yoon warned. Yes, but they'll misinterpret them, President Han replied. They believe we're weak. They'll think we're retreating in fear, not preparing to stand our ground. Later that day, aboard the Confederation flagship, Admiral Day received reports of the human diplomatic withdrawal. They're all leaving? Every representative? He asked Lieutenant Park. Yes, Admiral. They cite the Ganymede incident as a breach of trust, she replied. Admiral Day laughed, a deep rumbling sound. As expected, when faced with superior force, the weaker species always retreats before accepting reality. Science Officer Kim looked less certain. Admiral, I've detected unusual energy signatures from Earth's dark side, and there's significant material movement to their orbital facilities. Preparing refugee ships, no doubt, Admiral Day said dismissively. Or perhaps they think they can build some primitive defense system. Either way, it's of no concern. We've also lost contact with 3 of our research vessels near Saturn, Lieutenant Park added hesitantly. Equipment failures, Admiral Day waved his hand. Those ships were operating beyond their designed range in harsh conditions. On Earth, beneath the Pacific Ocean, the largest human manufacturing facility hummed with activity. Thousands of workers moved purposefully through the massive underwater complex. At the center of this hidden base, Admiral Lee and President Han stood before an enormous viewing window. Beyond the thick glass, robots assembled components for something massive. The partial frame of what would become humanity's answer to Confederation. Aggression was taking shape. How much longer? President Han asked quietly. 4 weeks until completion, Admiral Lee replied. Sooner, if we continue redirecting resources. President Han nodded, watching the construction with determined eyes. Then we have 4 weeks to endure their arrogance. What neither human leader knew was that at that very moment, Admiral Day was ordering his battle fleet to prepare for deployment to the Sol system. It's time, the Confederation leader told his officers, to remind the humans of their proper place in our protection hierarchy. Ambassador Min walked quickly through the gleaming halls of the Confederation's Central Council. Her steps echoed against the polished floor as she clutched a datapad containing troubling information. After 6 years of diplomatic service, she had developed a sense for when situations were deteriorating. The human situation had all the warning signs. The council chamber doors slid open, revealing the circular room where representatives from 27 species gathered. At the center stood Grand Marshal Day, his imposing figure commanding attention as he addressed the assembly. The humans have withdrawn their diplomatic corps, Ambassador Min announced, interrupting the session. All eyes turned to her. This represents a significant change in their position. I believe we should reconsider our approach. Grand Marshal Day's expression darkened. You interrupt council proceedings for this? They're sulking, Ambassador. It's what weaker species do before accepting reality. Ambassador Min stepped forward, refusing to be dismissed. Then explain the disappearance of our 3 research vessels near Saturn. All communication lost within the same 48-hour period. Equipment failures, Marshal Day replied with a wave of his hand. Those ships were operating beyond their designed range in a radiation-heavy environment. Science Officer Kim, who had been quietly observing from her station, cleared her throat nervously. Our long-range scans have detected unusual energy signatures from Earth's dark side, and there's significant material movement to their orbital facilities. Preparing refugee ships, no doubt, Marshal Day said with a laugh that several council members joined. They realize resistance is pointless. Ambassador Min had served too long to be silenced by ridicule. I've studied human history extensively. They appear physically weak by Confederation standards, but their historical records show remarkable adaptability. They've survived thousands of years of self-inflicted wars and environmental challenges. The chamber grew quiet as she continued. We've lost contact with every monitoring station we placed in their outer solar system. That's 17 stations, Marshal. Not 1 or 2 that could be explained by technical failures. Marshal Day's expression hardened. What exactly are you suggesting, Ambassador? I'm suggesting that we've misunderstood the humans, that our assessment of their capabilities may be flawed. A junior officer hurried into the chamber and whispered something to Science Officer Kim. Her eyes widened as she turned to address the council. We've just lost contact with our outpost on the human moon, she reported. Complete communication blackout. Last transmission mentioned unusual movement from the lunar surface. The council erupted in concerned murmurs. Marshal Day raised his hand for silence. Enough of this fear-mongering, he declared. The humans signed our protection treaty. They acknowledged their inferior status. Whatever they're doing is of no consequence to the Confederation. I recommend caution, Ambassador Min insisted. At minimum, we should send a diplomatic mission rather than a military one. But Marshal Day had already made his decision. We will send the battle fleet. It's time to remind the humans of their position in our protection hierarchy. 27 warships should be more than sufficient to make our point clear. As the council session ended, Ambassador Min approached Science Officer Kim in the corridor. "There's something you didn't share with the council," Min said quietly. Kim glanced around to ensure they were alone. "Our deep space listening posts intercepted a human transmission. They mentioned something called Thunderchild. When I searched their mythology, I found it was the name of a warship in an ancient story about aliens underestimating humans." "That can't be coincidence," Min replied. "There's more," Kim continued, her voice dropping lower. "The transmission included technical specifications. If accurate, they describe a vessel that exceeds our largest ships in both size and potential. Firepower." Min felt a chill run through her body. "Marshal Day needs to hear this." "I tried," Kim said. He laughed and said humans lack the technology and resources for such a project. Meanwhile, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean on Earth, Captain Sun stood in the command center of humanity's secret shipyard. Through the reinforced viewport, she watched as the final sections of the massive hull were sealed. Workers in specialized suits moved across the surface of the enormous vessel, checking connections and applying the last sections of the unique light-absorbing coating. "Status report," she requested. "Ahead of schedule, Captain," replied Chief Engineer Tay. "Main systems are online. Weapon systems are at 98% capacity. We can launch within 24 hours. Captain Sun nodded. "And the fleet?" "The rest of the ships are ready," Tay confirmed. "Crews are in final position." A communication officer turned from her station. "Captain, we've detected the Confederation battle fleet entering the outer solar system. 27 warships, standard formation." Captain Sun's expression remained calm as she issued orders. "Alert President Han. Begin launch sequence for Thunderchild. It's time to show the Confederation what they've misunderstood about humanity." As the massive bay doors began to open above the hidden shipyard, water drained from the chamber. The true scale of humanity's response to Confederation arrogance was finally revealed. The Confederation battle fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. 27 warships arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the distant sunlight. Each vessel represented the pinnacle of Confederation engineering, designed to project power and instill awe. On the command deck of the flagship, Marshal Day stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His large frame cast a shadow across the polished floor as he gazed at the view screen showing the blue-green planet ahead. "Send the submission broadcast," he ordered. "Demand they reduce all military facilities immediately and prepare for full integration into the Confederation protection system." Lieutenant Park's fingers moved swiftly across her control panel. "Broadcast sent, Marshal. Message is transmitting on all human communication frequencies." Marshal Day allowed himself a small smile. These displays of force rarely required actual violence. Most species recognize the futility of resistance when confronted with superior technology and firepower. Humans would be no different. No response. "From Earth," Lieutenant Park reported after several minutes. "Try again," Marshal Day ordered. "Remind them of the consequences of non-compliance." Before Lieutenant Park could send the message, she suddenly stiffened at her sensor station. "Marshal, we're detecting something massive leaving Earth orbit." "Put it on screen," Marshal Day ordered. The main view screen flickered, and silence fell over the command deck. A vessel was approaching, 4 times larger than the Confederation flagship. Its hull was made of an unfamiliar black metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No visible weapons could be seen on its smooth surface, but something about its design suggested tremendous power contained within. "Magnify," whispered Marshal Day. The image zoomed in, revealing the name emblazoned on the warship's side in simple white letters, UNSC Thunderchild. "How is this possible?" Marshal Day murmured. "Our intelligence indicated they had no such capabilities." Science Officer Kim's voice trembled slightly as she reported, "The vessel's energy signature is unlike anything in our database. It's generating power levels that exceed our entire fleet combined. Incoming transmission from the human vessel, announced Lieutenant Park. A woman appeared on screen. Her uniform was simple black with minimal insignia, but she carried herself with unmistakable authority. Her expression was calm, her posture perfect. This is Captain Sun of the United Nations Space Command vessel Thunderchild. You have violated the terms of our agreement by positioning a battle fleet in our home system. Withdraw your forces immediately. Marshal Day recovered his composure quickly. This is Marshal Day of the Galactic Confederation. Your deception regarding your military capabilities is a serious violation of the Protection Treaty. Power down your vessel and prepare for boarding. Captain Sun's expression didn't change. You misunderstand, Marshal. The treaty you offered was based on false assumptions about our capabilities. We signed it to assess your intentions. You will comply or face consequences, Marshal Day insisted, signaling to his weapons officer to target the human ship. We hoped for peaceful coexistence, Captain Sun replied. Your actions have made our decision clear. Before Marshal Day could respond, the Thunderchild fired a single weapon. A pulse of blue energy shot across space, faster than the Confederation sensors could track. It struck one of the destroyers on the fleet's outer edge. Instead of exploding, all the destroyer's systems immediately went dark. It drifted powerless, life support systems the only function still operating. That was a demonstration, Captain Sun continued. A non-lethal system designed to disable rather than destroy. The next shot will not be set to non-lethal if you continue your current course of action. Marshal Day stared at the screen in disbelief. None of the Confederation's ships had weapons with such precision or effect. How is this possible? Your species lacks the technological foundation for such capabilities. You scanned our bodies and found us wanting, Captain Sun replied. You should have scanned our history. Humans have always compensated for physical limitations through innovation. Your scans focused on muscle density and skeletal strength. You failed to recognize our real strengths. As if to emphasize her point, smaller vessels began emerging from behind the Thunderchild. Each was unique in design but built with the same black material. They moved with impossible speed, surrounding the Confederation fleet in a perfect formation. The choice is yours, Marshal, Captain Sun said. Peaceful coexistence as equals, or continuing to underestimate us. Choose carefully. Marshal Day looked around his command deck. His officers waited for orders, their expressions showing a mixture of fear and confusion. For the first time in his military career, he faced an enemy he had completely misjudged. Stand down weapons, he ordered finally. Request permission to send a diplomatic representative to discuss new terms. Captain Sun nodded. A wise decision. Ambassador Min will be welcome aboard the Thunderchild. As the transmission ended, Marshal Day stared at the massive human warship on the view screen. Everything he thought he knew about humans had been wrong. The galaxy had suddenly become a much more complicated place. Ambassador Min had never seen the Confederation Council chamber so silent. The usual murmur of multiple species in conversation was absent. Every representative sat perfectly still, attention fixed on the holographic display at the center of the room. Marshal Day sat slumped in his chair. His usually perfect posture was gone, replaced by the heavy weight of miscalculation. The events of the past 48 hours had shaken the Confederation's confidence to its core. The hologram flickered as Captain Sun's image appeared. She stood straight in her simple black uniform, her calm presence filling the chamber despite being just a projection. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting, she began. I believe we have much to discuss. The council leader, an elder representative named Tool, leaned forward. Captain Sun, the Confederation wishes to understand how your species concealed such advanced technology from our scans. We didn't conceal it, Captain Sun replied. You simply looked for the wrong things. You misunderstood us from the beginning. With a gesture, she changed the holographic display. Images appeared: human history, wars, technological achievements, space exploration milestones. 5,000 years of conflict taught us to compensate for our physical limitations, she explained. When you're not naturally strong, you learn to build strength. When you're not naturally armored, you forge better shields. The images shifted to show human innovation through the ages, from simple tools to complex machines, from early flight to space travel. Your species evolved on a high-gravity world with natural predators that encouraged physical development, Captain Sun continued. Humans evolved on a world that rewarded intelligence and cooperation. Our greatest strength was never in our bodies. Marshal Day finally spoke, his voice lacking its usual authority. The Thunder Child. How did you build such a vessel without our knowledge? The same way we built everything, by solving problems, Captain Sun answered. When we realized your scans focused on biological signatures and visible infrastructure, we adapted. The Thunderchild was constructed in underwater facilities. Your scans passed right over them because they were searching for the wrong signals. Ambassador Min stepped forward. We wish to negotiate new terms. Equal terms this time. Captain Sun nodded. That would be acceptable. As the formal negotiations began, Ambassador Min noticed how different the human representatives were now. Gone was the appearance of submission. Their true confidence was visible in every gesture and word. It hadn't been fear that made them sign the original treaty. It had been strategy. During a break in the talks, Ambassador Min approached Captain Sun privately. There are more ships like the Thunderchild, aren't there? Captain Sun smiled. Would you like to see them? She activated a private display. On the screen, hundreds of warships emerged from concealed locations throughout the solar system. Some rose from ocean depths, others appeared from behind moons or asteroids. Each was unique in design, but all bore the unmistakable mark of human ingenuity. We didn't build these because we wanted conflict, said Captain Sun. We built them because history taught us to be prepared. Your entire species maintained this deception, Ambassador Min said with newfound respect. Not one human revealed the truth during our interactions. Unity and purpose is another human strength, Captain Sun replied. When faced with potential threats, we set aside our differences. Ambassador Min considered this. The Confederation has existed for 3,000 years. In all that time, we classified species by their physical attributes. We never considered that strength could take such different forms. That's why this new beginning is important, Captain Sun said. Both our peoples have much to learn from each other. As they returned to the negotiation chamber, a new treaty was taking shape. No longer would humans be classified as a protected species. They would join the Confederation as equals, bringing their unique perspective and technological innovation to the galactic community. Marshal Day watched the proceedings with a thoughtful expression. His earlier arrogance had disappeared, replaced by careful consideration of each term. The human demonstration had been precise, disabling a ship without destruction, showing power without unnecessary violence. It revealed not just technological prowess but restraint. When the new treaty was finally ready, President Han joined the meeting via hologram. She and the council leader signed the document together, as equals. Today marks a new chapter in galactic relations, President Han said, one based on mutual respect rather than assumptions. Later, as the Confederation representatives prepared to return to their ships, Ambassador Min shared a final moment with Captain Sun. What would you have done if Marshal Day had chosen conflict? She asked quietly. Captain Sun's expression grew serious. We would have defended ourselves effectively, but we always preferred this outcome. She extended her hand in the human gesture of friendship. This time, Ambassador Min understood its significance and clasped it firmly. To new beginnings, Captain Sun said. And better understandings, Ambassador Min replied. Above them, Earth shone blue and peaceful against the stars, no longer underestimated by those who watched from above.